Hello and welcome to Open Dialogue, part of Meet Me at the Movies right here. I'm Noel T. Manning II. Appreciate you spending time with us. As always, we always say, we know you have more things that you can be doing with your time, but if you choose this, then we just want to say thank you. Our guest today, Catherine Tabor, so glad to have you. You are a voice talent, you're an on-camera talent, you are a multi-talented everything from what I understand. You are connected to the Star Wars universe, the Walking Dead universe, and many other things. And I'm hoping we can talk about some of those. But thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for that great intro. It makes it sound like I have a interesting life, and doesn't always
Well,
feel that way. But yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, it's pretty cool.
well, thanks so much for taking the time. And the way we got connected is there's a new indie film that's this. You're drawn sometimes to these post-apocalyptic sci-fi universe kind of
Yep.
stuff. Haven's End is the name of the film, and tell us a little bit about this film and how you got connected to it.
Yeah, I had worked with the director, Chris Etheridge, on his first feature, which was called The Attack of the Morningside Monster, which is just straight horror. And then we wanted to work together again. And the script came through Michael Harper, our writer, and it was just like, yeah, let's do this. This is awesome. So this one's more of a horror thriller, and like you said, it's got that apocalyptic film vibe that I love so much. I tried to figure out why I love it so much. I just, it's kind of that like, what would you do if the end of the world was near?
Yes.
And what would your friends do? Who would be useless? Who would be helpful? It's very important to know now, before the zombie apocalypse or whatever
That's
apocalypse it
right.
is.
That's
So,
right.
but yeah, so we actually shot in Georgia. So it'll probably look somewhat familiar as far as
Yeah.
like the terrain goes. And yeah, and had a great, mostly Georgia crew. Some other actors and myself were coming from LA at the time, but yeah, it's just the idea of what happens when the world starts to go to what,
Yeah.
and you leave the city, and then it's not just what's happening in the world, but also the interpersonal relationships that start to break down, and who can you trust and all of that stuff. So we had a lot of fun doing it, and I think it's a fun movie for right now because it's a bit of escapism.
Yeah.
It's not the super dark end of the world. I don't want to like scare everyone. Like it's not about, it's not about COVID or anything like
Right.
that. So
Right.
it's more fun.
Yeah.
Although the characters within the story maybe would disagree with me.
Well, I lately I've been engaging in a lot of disaster films and films of this type. Greenland is one that's recently been released, and there's a volcano disaster film that'll be released a little bit later. Simon West directed that, and I got a chance to talk to him a little earlier as well. And I've just always been drawn to this genre, and the genre is pretty vast. And one of the things you
Yep.
mentioned is what I love about truly good disaster films or apocalyptic films or sci-fi films. Sure, the effects are great, and you've got to have that. You've got to have good sound design. Those things add to it; they enhance it. But if you don't have
Right.
that story, that human, that character-driven thing that
Yep.
connects you to what's happening,
Yep.
then all it is flash and explosions and great sound. And so I'm like
Yep.
you. I love these stories that connect you to the characters because that's what keeps it alive, and that's what keeps
Yep.
it moving. And Walking Dead was one of those when it first launched. Sure, it was the zombie apocalypse, but it was honestly really about the drama of the human character and the
Yeah.
humanity and survival and what
Yeah.
would you do? Or what would you do
Yeah.
if you're in that situation?
And how those situations just change choices that you think you know who someone is, and maybe they would even be that person, when everything's going fine and dandy. But when stuff really changes, and stuff becomes life and death, uh, people change.
Yes.
People who are really good, usually that goodness
Yep.
gets magnified. People who are not so good, that other side gets magnified. I loved that in the beginning of the original Walking Dead as well,
Yeah.
when you would see relationships that in the normal world you'd probably just be like, oh, they're just a normal couple, and then the zombie apocalypse happens and it gets ugly
Yeah,
fast.
yeah. Well, I think, I had a relative, my grandfather would always tell me that we are who we become who we are when we are faced with crisis and conflict,
Yep.
and we become more of that. So
Yep.
whatever it is that's within us, it's hardened and it's strengthened by the character we present whenever we go through hard times. And I think
Yeah.
just
And
that's
I've always found that so fascinating. And that's one of the things that I love about apocalyptic film and literature. I just love that that character driven stuff and really wondering, and even asking yourself, what would I do? Like, how would
yes,
I handle this?
yeah,
And like I'm a tiny bit of a prepper. Like I have a bug out bag, and it's probably like all outdated now, which is really sad. But like even that's fascinating, like the kind of people who, like, even when this crisis started, I personally had toilet paper for days because
yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, I've got a lot of spare toilet paper in the garage. And then there were other people that were like, I have none, like literally none. I
Right.
ran out like 2 days ago, and I've just been like skimping, and using a paper towel. And it's just funny to even, that was really, I know, probably a little too much, but
No, it's okay.
it's just funny to even see how different people are,
Yeah,
and I always have the conversation with friends too of like, could you defend yourself? Would you defend yourself? I was raised with around guns and gun safety and all of that, and never really a hunter, but I've always been like, yeah, if a zombie or a really bad guy was coming at me, definitely. And then I have
yeah.
friends who are like, I could never, even if it was a walker, I don't think I could. Um, and it's like, well, I guess you'll work in the nursery then.
That's
And
right. Well, being prepared is a good thing, and I'm going to call out my mom here because you were talking about toilet paper, and when all
yep,
this started, she started keeping newspapers, like stacks and stacks of newspapers just in case, and so
just in
just
case.
yeah. So back in November, I was helping her clean out some stuff, and I said, "Mom, what are all these newspapers for?" She said, "Well, let me tell you." I said, "Well, I
I
think,"
love it.
I said, "if you want to hold on to them, that's fine." I said, "But I can help you get stocked up with some other things that might
Yes.
be a little better, but at least you'd have reading material if you needed it." So, hey,
Yes, I like her think that, I mean, actually, that's who you want in the
yes,
apocalypse. You want people who think outside of the box.
yeah,
You want people who are problem solving before things happen. So
absolutely.
head to your mom's house in the
That's
event of the zombie
exactly right.
apocalypse.
That's exactly right. Well, Haven's Inn, anything else you want to make sure you add about this film and why?
People can, yeah, people can see it right now. Streaming, you can get it in brick and mortar stores like Walmart, Amazon, and yeah, it's a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun making it. And so it's just one of those cool things when now finally, like, if you since we're all watching movies at home right now, it's
Yeah.
a good have some popcorn, sit on the couch, and watch this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, with this movie, this live action, you are on camera, but you've done so much voice work over the years. I'd love to get a background on how you got into acting, but also how you got into voice acting, because in many ways, there are two different avenues to get there.
Yeah, I pretty much knew that I wanted to be an actress since I was really young, since I was about 7. It kind of, it's funny because you look back and you go, you don't even know what it meant, but I just knew that was what I wanted to do. And so, I knew I was going to head out to LA, and I did. Um, and I was just there pounding the pavement like everybody else. And someone recommended me to a voiceover agent, and because they thought I was well spoken and they knew I could do accents.
Right,
I say this and people, it sounds weird. I didn't really know what voiceover was. I wasn't a big cartoon fan, but I mean, I understood that, but I didn't realize that voiceover was everywhere. I didn't
right.
think about the voiceover on commercials and
Mhm.
just everywhere. So I got really just blessed that the first agent that I met with saw something in me and gave me a shot. And then my second audition, my first was for Papa John's pizza, which I did not get.
Oh,
Still to this day, a
oh.
little bitter. Um,
So
but
do you eat Papa John pizza now, or have you just
I,
kind of said no?
what's funny is it turns out, and I didn't know this at the time, but it turns out I'm actually gluten intolerant.
Oh, yeah.
So I do not eat Papa John's pizza, but I did at one point in my life. And
Yeah,
the garlic butter sauce, I gotta
yeah.
say, like, pretty good.
Good stuff.
So, if Papa John's ever decides to, do new commercial campaign, I'm just saying they could make this right with me.
Love
Um,
it.
but yeah, so my second audition was for something called Knights of the Old Republic, a video game. And I just think, I didn't know it was a big deal. I didn't know it was a big role. I didn't know anything because I was so new, but I knew it was Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I think that my love of Star Wars just somehow allowed me to step into that universe honestly and authentically. And I think
Yeah.
that's one of the things you got to be honest and authentic in those situations, even if it's like there's a tauntaun. You can't be. You have to treat it like it's reality. And
It is a
if you're a
tauntaun.
sci-fi fan, yes, and if you're a sci-fi fan like me, that was easy to do. So that started it all,
Oh,
and I'm very lucky.
well, and you have continued to stay within that Star Wars universe through games, through movies and other
Yep.
formats as well,
Now
TV,
books.
in books, so in audiobooks
Yep.
as well. So
Yep.
once you got in that door, did it honestly just open up other other pathways through hyperspace into the different avenues of Star Wars?
It didn't, and that's what's so
Really?
funny. And this is a testament to my inherent Star Wars, maybe midichlorians or something in my blood. Um, because what happens is actually, and this is even more so now that I'm Padme than it was then. But they actually want to hire different people for different things. Unless you're a strict character actor and you just do creature sounds and stuff, then they'll
Right,
hire you and do a
right.
bunch of stuff. But it got to the point where Dara O'Farrell, who was the director on Knights of the Old Republic, and then um, The Force Unleashed, and then another game called Uprising, and all these things. Like I would end up in the booth, and he would be like, I, I was trying not to hire you again because I was trying to give someone else a chance, but you just were right. And again, I think that's my love of Star Wars.
Yeah,
And so really in all of the different departments, the games, the films, the TV show, they were all different.
yeah,
And you really ran more into the situation of it being more likely that they were like, well, we don't want to hire her, that she already did this. Now that I'm so cemented as Padme,
right,
um, I don't think that I'm gonna be probably like the next big, lead character that's
right.
new and introduced. And I'm okay with
Yeah.
that because Padme is the one that's closest to my heart. But I have played some great Twi'leks, not just Mission Veo in Knights of the Old Republic, but also Numa in Clone Wars and Rebels, and Vet in the Old Republic. And there will be more Vet content. This isn't a
Yeah,
spoiler alert or anything.
yeah,
I think at some point there will be more Vet content.
yeah.
So I get to continue to be some of those characters. And also I still get to be Leia in certain instances, which is
Right.
amazing. So
Wow.
every time I think, well, like, gosh, I wonder if that was it, then I'm blessed and something else comes up.
Yeah.
So
Well, once you got that first Star Wars gig, the fandom, of course, will attach themselves to anyone that's connected to it. So I know you've probably been to some conventions and been involved in some things like that, maybe as well.
yeah, I'm not a big convention person right now. I'm not one of those people who goes, well, no one is right now, but
Right.
prior to what was going on, I don't like to travel every weekend. It's like a lot, but I would always do Star Wars Celebration when
Yes.
given the opportunity. And so I did, I was in Chicago in March. I guess it was 2 years ago. Was it 2 years ago? I don't think it's fully 2 years ago. I think it'll be 2 years in this March.
Yeah.
And that was just amazing. And getting to be around just just sitting in the green room with all of these amazing people from all of the different iterations of Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's really an honor. Um, and everyone's just great. And we're all part of this family. And,
Yes.
and we're all, people are just blessed to be there. And I think most people know that.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said family because I was going to ask you if it felt like there was this family connection
Yeah.
there, and there are when you look at the history of pop culture, whether it's film or TV, you could probably name on both hands, maybe even one hand, the the ones that have lasted and
Yeah.
that are enduring. And Star Wars is one of those. Star Trek is
Yep.
another one of those as well. And to be connected to it and to know, wow, years from now when I look back, I was a part of that. That's a
Yep.
pretty amazing place to be. And these fortunate accidents that happen in our lives that will allow us to be involved in that. I think what you're doing by embracing it and knowing that, hey, this may not be forever, but I'm going to embrace it
Yep.
now.
Yep.
That's a great way to do it.
Well, and for me, the character of Padme in particular, I just love the character so much, and she's beloved by so many people for all of the right reasons. She just has such integrity and such grace, and she embodies everything that I think is great, except questionable taste in men. Um, but even that, because Matt Lanter as Anakin, I mean, my gosh, you just see like, well, I can understand, and Hayden Christensen. I mean, yeah. So, but yeah, I feel so blessed to actually play her. That it not only was it life changing just on a professional level, but it's just been huge. And when I say family, I particularly mean Clone Wars, to the point
Mhm.
that James Arnold Taylor, who's our Obi-Wan, literally just texted me,
Wow.
Matt Lanter this week. I mean, we are friends. We are in each
Yeah.
other's lives, and
Yeah.
I'm grateful to the universe for that as well.
How many years were you connected to that part? I guess you still are.
I th- I think it's been 12 years.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah. And I was really new. I mean, that was my first big thing. So, working with James Arnold Taylor and Corey Burton and Dee Bradley Baker, it was just like, it was amazing. I mean, not only was it Star Wars, not only was it Padme, I was with these people that are just legends and so talented. So, it's hard to believe now. Like, I remember going in the first couple of times and being like, oh my gosh, don't mess up.
My son, I brought my son up as a Star Wars fan, and I edited
Good dad.
the original trilogies. I edited those myself and had them on an iMac, so he could watch them anytime. I had the files, and I had them kid friendly. So I took out
Right.
some of the language. So he was four,
Yep.
5 years old watching these, and so the first one he saw in theaters was the Clone Wars,
Oh, wow.
Star
Yeah.
Wars, the Clone Wars, and
Yep.
so that animated version was the first thing he saw, and
Yeah.
for him to have that experience was pretty amazing. But now here he is, 21 years old, and we still talk about that love
Yep.
of this universe. And a few years ago, when all of a sudden we're getting these new films again, live action films, I remember sitting there with him and the music comes on and then there's the opening crawl and there was just this chill
Yep.
goes up your spine, and that's what it's like for people who love and are connected to types of films when they're able to do that. And Star Wars is just one of those that finds a way
Yep.
to continue to speak to audiences all these years later. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I really do feel blessed, and I feel again grateful to George Lucas. Like I always will. I
Yeah,
was grateful before I started working in it as an actress, and still grateful now for the courage that he had at the time to do something different, something that
yeah,
people laughed at and thought was
yeah,
silly, but had such heart. And that's what those original Star Wars films had, was just this heart and these
yeah,
characters again that you just loved. And that was the magic of it, that still is out there today. And I do think Clone Wars uh continued
yeah.
that
Oh,
that heart and that magic.
oh, absolutely. And here we are with things like The Mandalorian, and
Yep.
it's a universe that's going to continue to thrive in all of the
Yep.
different areas, like you said, books, graphic novels. It
Yep.
continues, and I'm really honestly thankful also to Disney, who found a way to keep it living and breathing beyond what I think anybody expected. And so
Yep.
we really appreciate you spending time with us, and you have taken a lot of time to be with us. We really appreciate it. Catherine
Well,
Tabor,
thank you.
guest right here. Any final thoughts or things you would like to share with our audience about any of your work in film, voice work, or the new series, the new Walking Dead spinoff series as well?
Yeah, that's really cool. If people haven't checked that out, The World Beyond, Walking Dead World Beyond, I totally recommend you check it out. I really haven't been watching a lot of TV or movies during these times. Um, so but I was watching that from the beginning because
Yeah.
I knew I was going to show up at some point. Um, and I really love it. And a friend of mine, actually not just a friend of mine, the director of Haven's End, Chris Etheridge, was
Okay.
also watching it, and we would be texting and be like, "This is." I'm actually really intrigued by this. It's actually really good, and um, it's a different Walking Dead universe, although it crosses over. But I love it because it follows these four young people.
Yeah.
And it's such a fascinating look at the apocalypse because again, it's these kids, that's pretty much all they've known.
Yeah.
And that's completely different than being an adult and having had this other life pre-Walker. And yeah, I think they're empties in
Yeah.
the world beyond. Um, but it's really fascinating. And even the character that I play, who is well, I mean, I don't know if it's like a spoiler. I don't know, but even her, to think about the choices that have put her in the situation that she's in, and would she be in that situation in the same way if the world wasn't insane
Right.
and you weren't living in these crazy things and you had freedom to make choices.
Yeah.
So that was even fascinating from that perspective, but I love the show as a fan, so I totally recommend people check that out too.
And
um,
I think
yeah.
it's fascinating that earlier on we were talking about these films that the apocalypse is pending. How do you respond to these choices?
Yep.
But with this one, you're already in it,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so the choices you make are based on this is what you've known, and that
Yep.
really is an interesting way. And these young people are coming of age
Yep.
and having to make adult choices now in their lives,
Yeah.
or choices that adults would make.
Yeah, it's really, I think it's really interesting, and I've just really enjoyed the storytelling and the characters. So again, for me, that's one of the reasons why. And I say that like in all honesty, not because I had anything to do with it, but just because I sat down and watched it, and now I'm like, I'm ready for it to come back. I want to know what happens. So
You're
because of
invested.
course
You're invested in it.
I know nothing, so um, so
Well, Catherine Tabor, thanks so much for being our guest right here
thank
on this
you.
open dialogue episode. And if people wanted to follow your work or see what it is you're doing, how do you recommend that? Do you have social media or do you have websites? What's the best way?
So my website is catherinetabor.com, and that will just kind of give you ways to sort of see a little bit of what I'm doing. But the place that I am the most is Instagram, and that's at Cat Tabor, CATTABER. That's where I actually am.
Okay.
I have Twitter, which is the same, but I again can't go on there because of spoilers. And 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 also Twitter's a little mean, so I don't know. I
Gotcha.
I enjoy the pictures, so I stay on
Yes.
Instagram mostly.
Yes. Well, Catherine Tabor, thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to
Thank you.
continue to following your work. And thanks for joining us right here on Open Dialogue. Till
Thank
next
you, and may the force be with you.
as well. And just to let you know, I have been celebrating you right here with the impressions of
Oh, I
Darth
saw.
Vader.
I saw that.
So, till next time, I'm Noel Manning for Catherine Tabor and for everyone right here on Open Dialogue. That's a wrap.